AJ Rice is the CEO of Publius PR, a premier communications firm in Washington, D.C. He is a brand manager, star whisperer, and auteur media influencer who has produced or promoted the likes of Laura Ingraham, Judge Jeanine Pirro, Donald Trump Jr., Monica Crowley, Mark Meadows, Senator Marsha Blackburn, Dan Bongino, and many others. He served as the executive producer to Laura Ingraham for 4 years and Monica Crowley for 2. In his new book, The Woking Dead: How Society's Vogue Virus Destroys Our Culture, Rice builds the case and engages the reader in a no-holds-barred view of what he describes as the mind-snatching menace known as woke culture. And joining us now is AJ Rice, author of the new book, The Woking Dead. As you can see, AJ, I have all my notes in here. It is an amazing book. The first question I have to ask, who would you define as the woking dead?
Well, it's cultural Marxism, really. At its core, that's what it is. We've always fought political correctness. We've always fought the nanny state, right? So, they want to take the salt shaker out of your hand, the cigar out of your mouth. And we've always battled back against that. And I know you're a newscaster, so correctness spins up. The last time I saw it was the Murphy Brown mafia in the mid '90s, right? So they're going to control the language and they're going to control what we do and say, and men in the workplace and women in the workplace, and we're all going to mind our P's and Q's, and that's fine to a certain degree. As society moves on, certain societal norms have to change, right?
Right.
I believe it's called presentism, where you judge today, or you judge the past by today's values, right? So obviously, have some sort of evolution of thinking, but at the core of this, you really have to go back 100 years. You got to go back to pre-World War I, when the Marxists show up here. They've got Karl Marx in one hand, and in the other hand, an Italian devotee of Marx named Antonio Gramsci. And Gramsci's theory was, in some of these places that have a middle class, and that's what we have, that's one of our strengths. You're not going to get a workers' revolution. You're not going to get, the storming of the Winter Palace like they did to the Romanovs in Russia. Most of the times when Marxism succeeds and they're overthrowing, an autocrat or a royal family or whatever, it's usually a peasant revolt. It's usually the serfs rise up and they decapitate whoever's in charge. Even France, the Jacobins in France, taking out the royal family there in their revolution. So they look around and they say, wow, the blue collar workers here, they love this place. They probably fought in the Spanish-American War. Maybe they just got off a boat from some nightmare that they were escaping. I'm Irish, and I can say that the Irish and the Italians got off boats around the same time, and we were trying to escape a nightmare in Ireland. It was basically religious persecution where they were trying to starve the Catholics to death. So they look around and they say, wow, we need different foot soldiers. Because, you might have guys at the turn of the century before World War I, they might have fought in the Civil War if they were 20, and they're 60 now. World War I is coming. We can't get a bunch of plumbers and carpenters and longshoremen to overthrow the government. So we need someone else. Well, who do they look to? They look to the entertainment industry at the time. So early radio, Broadway, silent picture industry. They invade the newspaper industry, which is the media at the time. They get into the government schools from kindergarten all the way up to law schools, right? Even, Georgetown. They're in the Ivy Leagues. They're in Georgetown, which is the oldest Catholic institution. William and Mary and Harvard are the oldest colleges in general, Protestant institutions, and William and Mary is. And then, they work their way through it. And obviously, they find home in the Democrat Party of Margaret Sanger and Woodrow Wilson. So if you fast forward 100 years, these are pretty much the same people we're fighting now. These are the Woking Dead comes from these people. So the only difference, of course, is today they have something that they didn't have 100 years ago, and that is big tech. Big tech acts as the Walking Dead's cartilage that holds this all together. They're the little digital brown shirts they're picking winners and losers. They're deplatforming. They're demonetizing. They're shadow banning people. So you can now censor someone. You can cancel someone today at the speed of light. Years ago, if you wanted to ban the Bible or Mark Twain or Hemingway or Orwell or someone like that, I mean, you'd have to shut down the printing press. I mean, you couldn't do it. We weren't as interconnected. So interconnectivity, as great as it is, allows the ship to move faster.
Okay, so we understand the history, but here we are today. I think there are a lot of people out there who are very confused. We're getting messages from all over the place, and we don't understand, I think, the lessons of the founding fathers and freedom and the Declaration of Independence.
Wokeism is like Baskin and Robbins, right? It has a lot of flavors. And one of the primary flavors, look, people in power have always, they've always tried to turn us into dummies. It's not a new thing. Even in the beginning, in order to vote, you had to be white and male and own property. And, you know, Jefferson, to his credit, wanted everyone from the farmer all the way up to the educated man to vote. Some of that scared the crap out of Alexander Hamilton. So he's like, we can't let these morons vote. What are you talking about? And that was a healthy debate, and to some degree, that still goes on, right? You know, we joke about it. I mean, look, if the people of Pennsylvania wake up in the morning on election day and they say to themselves, John Fetterman is the best representation of me, I think you and I would have a lot of jokes about them. And I'm from Philly. So look, if they do that, I'm going to have to burn them a little bit in a bunch of columns. So we'll see what happens with that race. But look, the point is this. The point is this. They, with the 1619 Project, look, you and I knew this was never always going to be about tearing down statues. It really is a two-pronged attack. Obviously, they want the middle class to go away, but they need Greco-Roman, Judeo-Christian civilization, Western civilization, to go away. So they could start with Robert E. Lee if they want, but you and I know they're not going to end with Robert E. Lee, because as soon as the Confederate generals were gone, the Union generals were next, and thereafter Churchill and Thatcher and Christopher Columbus. You know, they're everywhere. They're trying to destroy civilization. So absolutely. And they want to sit in with their bleak image of the world.
So when we say they, now not everybody understands what the World Economic Forum is and globalism in general. Sure. Can you just give an introduction so people understand when people are talking about they are doing this, we don't know who they is. And it's my opinion that if you don't define who is making these decisions or policies, how are you supposed to go up against them?
So the one, if you're going to try to have a unified theory of wokeness, you've got to basically understand that I try to not make it monolithic in the sense that there's some godhead, the head of the snake somewhere, and they're puppeteering all of this. Most of it, look, is LeBron James part of this? Yes, he's as much a part of it as some nutty public school administrator in Minneapolis who recently said that if we have to fire people in the public school system here, we're going to start with white people first. Okay? Because white people are not a Minneapolis public schools. They get fired first. So, you know, these two data points are very disconnected from each other. I mean, there's no straight line other than cultural Marxism and the philosophy of wokeness. And there is a anti-male Me Too strain. There is a trans mafia trying to groom your children strain of this. There always has been a racial supremacy strain of this, where people see racism around every corner. And as soon as the patron saint of fentanyl died, that sort of opened Pandora's box and allowed them to basically administer behavior that otherwise, would be shunned, right? So, and you can burn entire cities down now. You can burn churches. You can do all of these things. But at its core, it's totalitarianism. It's monitoring people's lives. Look, I'm going to tie three things together for you. Salman Rushdie, who is by no means, some kind of right winger. He's a public intellectual. He might be an atheist. He wrote a book 30 years ago critiquing Islam, critiquing the mullahs in Iran specifically, called the Satanic Verses, making fun of Muhammad. Look, I got plenty of clients to do that. But a fatwa was put out on him, and it kind of became a joke. And 30 years later, some lunatic jumps on stage and stabs him a lot. How he's blind in one eye and can't use some of his fingers. Understand something. Cancel culture doesn't have to just come from the left. It can come from any form of totalitarianism. And when you're talking about the Islamic Republic of Iran, I mean, look, here they are, jumping on stage, stabbing someone. Dave Chappelle, who by no means is Ben Carson, he's not Clarence Thomas. He's a black guy from D.C., but he's a master of his craft, and he's asking a very simple question. He's asking how the LGBTQ mafia got their rights in 4 minutes when it took black people 400 years. How that happened so quickly? He's merely asking that question. I mean, he's not saying, Roe v. Wade should not have been overturned. But that's not enough. So the lunatics at Netflix that work there, they pour into the parking lot. They're protesting their own company. Some guy jumps on stage, just like Rushdie, and tries to stab him in Los Angeles. Lee Zeldin is campaigning. Now, here's a Republican Jewish guy, served in the military. He's a congressman. He's running for the governor of New York. He's talking about Veterans Affairs, and some union drunk white guy that doesn't like what he's saying jumps on stage and tries to stab him. They give out Brett Kavanaugh's home address. So look, if they can't cancel you digitally, they'll come physically. There is a strain here. I mean, who showed up and shot Steve Scalise? It was a Bernie Sanders lunatic. I was 2 blocks from that baseball stadium. I'm not trying to say I was in the line of fire like Hillary did when she went to Bosnia and she heard sniper fire. But look, Rand Paul's neighbor went over and broke his ribs because they don't like what Rand Paul's saying. So look, they can cry about J6 all day long, but the fascism, the people that are hunting down speech, it's coming from the left. It's coming from the left. And you can tie these things together.
I think the most scary thing is the threat to free speech. And personally, for me, that's when I started to really do my research and try and have conversations. But the thing is, a lot of people are not willing to have the conversation, or they're absolutely terrified. So how do we fix that?
Well, part of the problem is that there's not enough free speech absolutist Democrats left. You know that you're onto something when Bill Maher and Mark Levin and Pat Robertson and Naomi Wolf and Bobby Kennedy Jr. and George P. Bush, Trump Jr., and so on, and I can keep going on. Some of those people are my clients. All sound the same on cancel culture. All sound the same on wokeness and on the speech. I mean, Bill Maher there's no sunlight between he and I on this stuff. And he doesn't agree with me on a lot, but he agrees with me on this. And look, he knows. Look, he's good friends with Salman Rushdie. Maher knows. He can make fun of the Jesuits all day long. They're not going to jump out of the bushes and stab him. So he knows where it's coming from. He knows the areas of our culture that this silencing, this totalitarian silencing comes from. I mean, a couple years ago, you had Vincent van Gogh's grandson stabbed to death in broad daylight in the middle of a street because of a documentary he made critical of Islam. So it can come from the left. It can come from, radical Islamic terror. I mean, I always think about that famous video of the Taliban with the RPGs firing the RPGs at the Buddhist statues. ISIS rushing, all those Chaldean and Assyrian Christian temples that, like, from the first century. Some of them even. So look, they are trying to expel. It's not always just Western civilization. In some cases, civilization. I mean, Hindu temples have been getting burned in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh for hundreds of years. And it's not because they believe in Jesus Christ or Moses. There is a fascism afoot. You always see it. You can see it in any of these atheist, orthodoxies that come about, whether it's Castro's version of Marxism or Stalin and Lenin's or Ho Chi Minh's or, Kim Il-sung or any of these. I mean, you can see it. It's the same everywhere. Hitler did it. Mussolini did it. Franco did it in Spain. The Japanese did it with Shintoism. It's like they're trying to create a gigantic user agreement to be an American, and you have to sign the box, right? It's an agreement of terms, right? Like, oh, we shut down your LinkedIn account today. In order to come back, you're not allowed to talk about global warming, the vaccine, January 6th, the phony election. Can't talk about any of that. You just have to agree with the left-wing digital brown shirts user agreement on how to be a citizen. And they're just creeping slowly towards the Chinese social credit score system. I mean, that's kind of what it is. I mean, no, it's not. How dare you? Just unplug. Look, plenty of people unplug, and that's fine. Good for them. But I mean, you and I are in the media. We can't unplug. We have to go into the arena and fight these people. So that's what we have to do. But you can just see every day where their priorities are with the bumbling, the misfit press secretary, and she's in over her head. I mean, I feel bad for her some days, but it's just look.
I loved when you talk about in the book on page 95, you talk about Ron DeSantis, and I think it is an excellent description. This is your words. With Ron DeSantis, you get a leader who does not fear the media at all. Even better, their attacks seem to energize him. You can almost see his spine straighten and lighten up when they attack, like he's just charging up to destroy them with a logic blast. They never learn, they never see it coming. In his often understated way, he just wrecks them, and then he walks away. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
It is. I mean, look, whether Donald Trump runs again or not, the one thing, look, the Democrats love when the Republican Party is really good at losing. When we accept their premise, like McCain and Romney, and we go home and we eat our cream of wheat and cry into our herbal tea and just shut up and go home and Obama's wonderful and be done with it. Hillary Clinton's up next, just elect her. That's what they like. They like linguini spine Republicans. And what Trump did, and it wasn't always fun for everyone, he gave the Republican Party space to not only regrow their spine, but allowed for certain people where you have this sort of trickle-down Trumpism to, in some cases, master what Trump is best at themselves, without maybe even a more polished version of what Trump does. Trump's just like Godzilla. He comes in, he'll eat your face, and then leave. Kick the house down on the way out. The way Kari Lake and Ron DeSantis do it, oh boy, the media is afraid of them. I mean, in some alternate universe where Biden and Kamala had to debate DeSantis and Lake, mop the floor with them.
Kari Lake is off the charts.
It would be a bloodbath. It would be a bloodbath. The goofball vice president wouldn't stand a chance.
Right? Well, AJ, I think we've covered a number of interesting topics today. I am really not I don't consider myself to be a conservative. I am very, obviously, by my life's work, I'm very, women's issues are very important to me. I am comfortable saying that I am pro-choice, but I also believe in free speech, because if we can't speak and share ideas and debate, we can't understand what's going on. And I think that there are so many people out there who really want to understand what's going on, and they're just being fed a lot, not always, but a lot of lies. They can't even believe that people in positions of power would lie to them. And it's like, it's happening. It's happening. So I love speaking with you, because you're just dropping truth bombs left and right. And I'm trying to, I'm trying to figure out who the people are that are speaking truth, just speaking truth. Because I think that's, at the end of the day, what's most important, at least in my perspective.
I agree. I mean, look, you've been fantastic. You're a patriot. You're trying to get to the bottom of this. There used to be more. Used to be able to be a pro-life Democrat, or used to be able to be Democrats used to stand for a little bit more diversity of thought on their side. There are some people out there, Bari Weiss is out there. I mean, there's some people, Glenn Greenwald. I mean, look, they're out there, they're not going to church on Sunday with Pat Robertson. But look, the arena of ideas is where we fix this stuff. This wasn't supposed to be this way. We weren't supposed to be separate but unequal. The left fought for years to end separate but equal. And now, conservatives, we have to create our own churches and social media platforms. And, everyone just sort of retreats to their corner, and there's no dialogue. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And once again, the book is The Woking Dead. It is an amazing book. I can tell you firsthand, because I'm reading it. I'm taking all my notes, and hopefully you can come back soon and we can discuss more.
Absolutely. Thank you.
AJ, it's been a pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.